All right, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this finally Friday, December 22nd, 2023, 11:40 a.m. here, California time. 2.5 and a 2.3 out here. The latest quakes on the globe. Did see some larger scale movement out here around Puerto Rico and also in the area well south of South Africa here along the plate boundary. 6.1 coming in overnight, or this morning, just within the last couple hours here. But first, I want to cover the activity here in Iceland. Some interesting wording going on here across this Icelandic Met Office. The latest updated information here today on the activity up in around the Grindavik, Iceland region. These guys are saying that the unabated ground uplift at Svartsengi basically means that it hasn't changed. As announced yesterday, the fissure eruption at this region right here has ended. This indicates a temporary cessation of eruptive activity. In the last 24 hours, it looks like about 90 earthquakes or so were recorded in these regions here, Grindavik, Svartsengi region. Now, here's the interesting part here. If you watch the last couple videos here, I've talked about the GPS displacements going on here, how we've seen, a month and a half, almost 2 months of inflation going on here across this area. Of course, we had that eruption that began there, that fissure eruption on the 18th of December. Lasted, for a day, couple days there. Start off with a pretty decent amount of volume there for magma and lava flow. But it made just a very minimal adjustment on the GPS stations here. This is the vertical uplift displacement here at the Svartsengi region. And this has been the area where the greatest inflation has taken place. Now, on this chart here, it looks a little confusing. Now, if you think about a graph, if this is going to be displacement, why is it down here now? Well, this for some reason, this is the way the chart has picked it up. Inflation began back in early November, and technically you can add this up on top of this chart right here. Take this chart, this graph reading, and add it on here, and it will continue up. So just got to imagine here that this continues off this line. Humongous amount of inflation going on in the trend. The deflation event, the little bitty deflation event, began around the eruption, right? The 18th. You can see it here on this chart, dropping a little bit. And now we're going back up. We are going back up on the chart. So this is similar to what I said a couple nights, or was it last night or the night before, how I was cooking some artichokes in a pan with water with a lid. And, when it cooks and boils, for the most part, the steam stays inside and the water does as well. But occasionally, if the rim of the top is not securely on the pan, it will spill out a little bit on one side that's weakest, where it has the weakest weight. And sure enough, I get water spilling out sometimes when I'm boiling the artichokes, and it creates steam off one side. This is, I believe, what is going on here across the area of Iceland. This fissure activity has opened up in the region east of where the greatest amount of inflation has taken place. The Svartsengi area, of course, is the greatest inflation zone. Let me go back here and show you guys just real quick, and then we'll read the wording. The Jeep right here. This is just one. This goes from the 18th to the 19th up to the 30 mm range. We could go back further and show you guys more of the inflation that's going on in this area right here. This goes from the 28th to the 6th of November. This goes well beyond 60. All of the swelling, so to speak, is underneath the Svartsengi area. And the region of where we're seeing the fissure activity is over here, just off the side of the pan lid. The pan lid, my little scenario there when I'm cooking. So imagine all this stuff, magma brewing underneath there. I think we have a considerable amount of magma underneath the Svartsengi area, and it's just finding some of the weaker areas here off on the side to open up some fissure activity. That's where and that's why it hasn't really lasted that long. It only lasted a day and a half, 2 days, completely done right now. But the elevated activity, the inflation here that we've seen over the last couple months here, and it's basically inflating, I think they said, since 2020, but more so here in the last couple months, right? Considerable amount of inflation going on underneath the Svartsengi area. Not over here where the current fissure activity is, but right over here to the west. Now, this area is thicker crust, and that's why we're seeing that go up and up and up with a little steam blow off here over here on the eastern side of where the magma is brewing up. But I think this could be a worst case scenario. Even though the ground is thicker here, it's possible we could see some more eruptive or further fissure activity within this region. The GPS levels have not gone down following this eruption on the 18th. Here's a little downturn, right? A small amount of drop. That looks like maybe I'm trying to think, 75 mm drop, maybe. But looking at the past couple months here, a little drop like this is nothing compared to what we have seen here, inflation. And now we're going back up here since right after the eruption. It seems like right after the eruption began, we started to climb back up. So that means we got further magma increasing below. So there's a little concern here that we could see stuff open up outside of this zone. Now, their wording is that they believe it will take place between these regions right here, the Hagafell and these. I'm not for sure how to pronounce that correctly. I'll show you guys on the earthquake or Google Earth view. Here's this region here that I will try to get a correct pronunciation a little bit later. Hagafell region. They believe it's going to occur within these two regions right here. Now, this is where the current fissure activity is taking place, or the one that happened on the 18th of this month. But that would just still be a little steam blow off here over to the east. What about this entire region over here that's seeing the brunt of the inflation? Right? I get it that this is weaker over here, but this continues to rise and rise and rise, and this did nothing. This activity that we've seen did nothing for the inflation that's going on out here. So something's up. I think, just by observation here, that we may see an eruption take place over here across this region. That's where all the inflation is taking place here. Let's go ahead and read some of these, some of this wording from the official folks here. According to GPS and satellite-based measurements, ground uplift. Let me double check, make sure I got the bells off. I do. Everything's good. We're live. Ground uplift at the Svartsengi between 10th of November, when the magmatic intrusion formed, and the 18th of December progressively declined. This process is likely to repeat itself, meaning that the next dike intrusion could begin with little warning when the uplift rate decreases again. Therefore, the likelihood of an eruption increases day by day. They're saying that the daily ground uplift at the Svartsengi between these regions here progressively declined. I'm not seeing that, though. When you look at this, maybe it's declining in terms of what we had already seen. I don't know. That doesn't make sense, does it? Let me go back over here and see. So they're saying this signifies that magma accumulation continues unabated beneath Svartsengi. So unchanged. Now this is kind of opposite of what I just said right here. According to GPS and satellite-based measurements, ground uplift in the Svartsengi region was apparent immediately after the eruption began on the evening of the 18th of December. Initial measurements show that the rate of uplift is greater than before the eruption occurred. This signifies that magma accumulation continues unabated, unchanged beneath Svartsengi. This development will likely lead to another dike intrusion and ultimately a volcanic eruption. In the event of an eruption, the most likely source is between these regions. But when they show here, they're stating that it was declined. Maybe it was just between these periods here, the 10th and the 18th. But that would mean that we got that further influx, that push up of magma increasing the activity here. But this statement right here signifies that the GPS measurements here is unabated. Magma accumulation continues there in the Svartsengi area. Following confirmation of the end of the 18th December eruption, they issued, it looks like there's been a new hazard assessment. The main changes affect zones 2 and 3, where hazard levels have reduced from very high to high. So that's this area because of the lack of activity right now. Obviously, there's still quite a bit of inflation over here around the Svartsengi area, but the fissure activity is closed up for now. We emphasize that conditions can change rapidly and that the weather conditions can significantly affect the sensitivity of our monitoring networks, such as the seismograph stations and whatnot. So it's some interesting wording right there, and I just find it so odd here that we've seen this increasing amount of inflation going on here across the Svartsengi area, and we've seen it on that map. The inflation area is roughly right around this region right here. Need to draw a little circle within this zone, and this ground is apparently thicker. The crust is apparently thicker than this region over here where we've seen that little fissure blow off. But I can't help but wonder and think that maybe we're going to see something over here kick off here soon. The key indicator of watching this or seeing when this is going to happen is, of course, earthquake activity. Let me back out here and go to the earthquake map and show you guys what's going on out here across Iceland. Got a little bit of uptick here overnight and this morning, about 84 earthquakes since midnight. And as we zoom into the Grindavik region, well, we're seeing areas here northeast of Grindavik, and this, well, the fissure zone is roughly right around in this area right here, right where the hand is, just east of the Slingerfell area. And they're stating that the eruption could take place between here and up here across this region. Now remember, most of the GPS and the displacements going on over here. There's not a whole lot of earthquake activity taking place here, but we're noticing a new little swarm of earthquake activity away from the fissure zone further to the east. That's a little interesting here. We'll have to watch that and see if this develops into something, but we would definitely see a huge amount of earthquake activity prior to any fissure openings out here across the region. They did mention a while back, a couple updates back, that if we were looking at an eruption out here where the ground is thicker, that you can kind of see this area circled out here, right? That's kind of, I guess, where the magma accumulation can accumulate here across this region here. And it does include a portion of where the fissure activity is open up, but on those GPS stations here, it showed that most of the inflation is going on across here, Svartsengi region, and but I guess it is within that little circle area here as far as the current fissure activity. But we would see, they mentioned that we would see earthquake activity really kicking up if we were looking at maybe an eruption or a fissure opening up out here. I am not seeing anything, but obviously there has been historically out here, right? Historically we have seen. But right now the earthquake activity is focused around the fissure area and areas now to the northeast here in a little new zone. But we'll continue to watch this and report back on it. I don't think we're done at all with this. I mean, if we were done, we should have seen this thing go way down. The eruption, I think, should have lasted a little bit longer. It just, to me, it seems like a little blow off of a steam here off the top of the pan where most of the heat is building. My assumption, my observation here, as we head into the future, I think we may see things open up over here. But for right now, we'll continue to watch it and report back on anything. There's that huge area of inflation going on. The current fissure activity sits right around here, around these old crater regions. just to the northeast of the Grindavik region, Blue Lagoon right here. So we will continue to watch it, but goodness, quite the inflation going on out there, I'm telling you, with very minimal GPS decline. All right, let's get into earthquake activity, because we did see some larger scale movement out here across the region of the Puerto Rico area, Dominican Republic. We've seen a 5.3 here just within the last hour and a half or so. Right on the plate boundary, just shy of the Puerto Rico Trench. Decent moderate earthquake. I can't recall the last time we've seen a 5.3 right there, but they do get some good-sized earthquakes out there in this area along the plate boundary. Puerto Rico Trench sits up here as well. I think that area is capable of producing some significant size earthquakes. We just haven't seen it. That 5.3 occurring outside this kind of outside of the region where we've seen larger earthquake activity, specifically within this zone. I'm not for sure if they've, here's the epicenter supposedly, but it's away from the felt rings. Let's see how many people may have felt it out here. A few folks reporting it. Again, not a big earthquake, but somewhat of a moderate quake here compared to what we have seen in the in the past couple months. 10 kilometers deep, relatively shallow. And if we look at the last 30 days or so of earthquake activity, we've seen increasing movement around this region, and more specifically over here across the Puerto Rico Trench area. See that little cluster of swarming. So we know that there's strain up here against this area. Definitely got to watch that. Locally here where this 5.3 struck, within the last 30 days, we've seen a couple 4s and 2s. So it's possible we could see things building up here to maybe something a little bit bigger out here. We can do a quick search of the earthquake catalog and take a look at historical larger earthquakes for this region. We'll go back, back in the year 1000. Doesn't mean that we're out there, or doesn't mean that we're looking at all the data from the year 1000, but at least it will cover the written records that we have from the USGS and whatnot. I think that covers it. Just want to take a look and see what we have here. We're going to go to the largest magnitude. Yeah, some of these can get pretty big. 6.4 back in 1916 on that plate boundary. Very close here to the same area that we seen that 5.3. A little bit further to the west, 6.0, 1945. Some larger quakes there as well. Back in 1946, a 7.8 earthquake there, just south of the region that we've seen today. Goodness. So if you look at all these large earthquakes, what do you guys notice? Most of these quakes here, the large big ones, it's been a long time since we've seen a big one out there. 2014 a 6.4, but that's way over here. I remember that one north of Puerto Rico. But looking at these larger quakes here, I would say that we could be somewhat overdue in terms of some larger scale potential out here across this area along the plate boundary. Look at that, all from, there's one from 1842, the 7.6. So we got a lot of time that's built up here, a lot of strain built up in this region. Definitely keep an eye on this area because it has been showing some elevated movement out here recently. But for now, a 5.3, keep an eye on it. This Caribbean plate gets shoved around and pushed around by the two huge plates up north, and west of it, there's a lot going on there in that region. Surprised we don't see more activity there. Also, well south of South Africa, we've seen a 6.1 coming in about 9:30 or so. That looks as though, about an hour later, it stirred up things up north here into the Puerto Rico area. This is a divergent boundary zone, so meaning separation of the oceanic crust out here, oceanic seafloor. Looks like that may have added a little bit of strain out here up north. A lot of people tend to think that How can an area thousands of miles away, literally thousands of miles away, affect an area of the plate of a different plate boundary way up north from it? Well, you got to think about this. All these areas, they got a little connection in a way, I would say, a big connection. When you move one piece of the puzzle around, ultimately affects areas not only nearby, but could be potentially just enough strain somewhere else where that piece of the puzzle is building up further strain. And so I firmly believe that earthquake activity up here in Alaska could affect what goes on in California or over here across the Western Pacific. I mean, it's all a jigsaw type puzzle. Move one piece around, and of course it adjusts areas potentially nearby or along a different plate boundary, all kind of connected. So that 6.1, been a little while since we've seen some activity out there. Coming about 10 kilometers deeper. So historical data obviously gets a lot of earthquake activity. They don't get any bigger than that, though. I think maybe low to mid sixes, but divergent boundary zones, not a huge buildup such as subduction zones. So I'm not really worried about anything larger taking place out there. Let's see what else we got here. A little bit of movement here in South America as well. Subduction zone activity 4.2, 243 kilometers deep here into this Peru-Chile Trench. This is the area that kind of seen a, well, they've seen some larger scale movement here recently, right? 6.2, that's right. Back on the 20th. This one about 93 kilometers deep into the Peru-Chile Trench area. But we've been noticing a lot of deeper activity triggering here, specifically within this zone. That could be a sign that we're seeing maybe something about ready to brew in the larger scale department upstream. It's continuing, definitely getting some deeper activity going on there. All right, let's see what else we got. I know we're kind of zigzagging around the map, but look at all this activity out in the Western Pacific, Japan area. Goodness, these guys have been getting a lot of earthquake activity here over the last couple days. Some of it deep, some of it shallow. Look at those numbers. That is not good. That's at the northern end of the Japan Trench region. The Kuro-Kamchatka, looks like we did see a little bit further movement up here. This area I'm concerned about because that is capable of producing some significant sized earthquakes. It's a subduction zone here, and it's been a little while since we've seen any significant movement out here. It's been the quiet spot of all the quiet spots, it seems. And this is a very high accumulated slip rate area in terms of building up stress. It's reinforced the North American plate pushing to the northwest here. I don't have my little plate tectonic map up, but this area should have seen some larger scale movement by now. But it is showing some elevated activity south, so we'll keep an eye Japan Trench northward here, potentially for some larger movement. Further down south, pretty good clustering going on across the entire area of the Indonesia Islands region. Not a whole lot of advancement going on here across the Java Trench for now. Starting to fill back in over here around Papua New Guinea eastward. Remember I said keep an eye on this area. It was our quiet zone here over the last couple days. It's filling in. 5.0, 114 kilometers deep, 4.7 down in the Vanuatu area. Some of these are deep. I'm not really seeing any surface adjustment quakes going on, so that could be a sign here that this may need to fill in further at the surface levels to catch up with all the plate movement that's going on here recently. Down into the, well, look at this activity up here, 5.0 from about 7 o'clock this morning. Quite a bit of strain building up here, it looks like. These two quakes here deep from yesterday. Definitely watch up here. You know, a lot of times when this deeper activity happens here in the Tonga and the Kermadec Trench, we'll watch for some plate adjustment here because it adds a lot of strain up here. But if there's been enough strain building upstream here, then we need to watch these zones as well. Looks like this region here is starting to show some activity. 5.0 from a couple days ago, and now we got a 5.0 again today. Both of these relatively shallow, so keep an eye upstream here into the Tonga region. New Zealand seeing a little bit of activity. It looks like some 3.5. South Island just off. Actually, it looks like it's on the plate boundary here. North Island not showing a whole lot. Let's go check that out real quick. Haven't checked out New Zealand in a couple days, so we'll see what's going on over here. Looks like, well, these guys are showing a 5.0 here 5 hours ago, but where is it at on the Earthquake 3D globe? Nobody picking up on it? See that? 5.0. That is deep. If that is the... Holy smokes, 160 kilometers deep. It looks like this is definitely a legit earthquake here because quite a few folks did report feeling this 5.0 occurring, it looks like about 5 hours ago. But nothing showing up here. You guys see that? Nothing showing up on the Earthquake 3D globe. I wonder why. And that's gonna, well, that's a 4 point. Where is this? Yeah, the 5-pointer is down south here a little bit, right there. So I'm really surprised it hasn't shown up. Let me check out the earthquake drums. Obviously, it looks like it's a legit earthquake because quite a few folks felt it, even with it being somewhat deep here. And that baby showed up all across the seismograph stations here. So that is no doubt a legit earthquake. Really surprised nobody else picked up on it. The EMSC or the USGS, nobody picked up on it. That's kind of odd. All right, so definitely looks like some deeper activity triggering here underneath the that'd be the northern edge of the South Island region. Looks like it was right about in here. That's a little on the sketchy side because that may have something to do with the Hikurangi subduction zone there. Let me go back here to the map and see. Yeah, 160 kilometers deep, just right there. Hikurangi subduction zone sits just off the east coast here of North Island, but remember that that's a subduction zone, so these deeper quakes will look further inward here on the map. And keep an eye on that region there. That's a little crazy. Far as anything else following that movement, I'm really not seeing too much. There was a couple of smaller quakes here, it looks like, just around North Island area. Keep an eye on New Zealand here. Deeper movement, pretty much all the time puts strain upstream. All right, definitely active though. Look at that. That's a lot of activity stirring up out there in the Western Pacific and adjacent plates. Doesn't look like it's had any effect here on the Hawaii area, though. They sit out there on that hot spot. Normally, when we see a lot of movement going on out here, it will affect what goes on out here across the middle of the Pacific. Only a handful of smaller earthquakes. Let's get the latest informational statement here from the USGS. This update was put out today. The volcano is currently not erupting, and looks like so cycles of rising and falling seismic activity can be expected to continue during repressurization of the summit magma reservoir, which has been ongoing since the end of the September eruption. Seismicity has not reached the levels that immediately preceded recent summit eruptions at Kilauea. Now, that's true, but the inflation is at its highest level since the 2018 eruption. They're saying tilt meter has not changed significantly here in the last 24 hours, so let's go check it out ourselves. See what's going on as we zoom out here to the Kilauea volcano. And we're going to check out the UWE station out here. Well, it looks like we're still going up. Got a pretty decent uptrend here in the last 2 days. And, of course, the last 30 days here shows our previous inflation events going on here at the summit region of Kilauea volcano. Each level rising higher than the previous inflation level. And this is just the last 30 days. So this has been going up and up and up. This most recent one is not quite there yet. It looks a little different compared to all the other areas, the other graph readings here. But we'll continue to watch that. It's still on an uptrend, but we're not quite at the peak of the previous inflation level here, which occurred, it looks like, around the 11th of this month. So we'll continue to watch that. Let's see what else we got. Anything major going on out here in California? Let's see here. Well, we got one way up on the northern end of the San Andreas Fault, 1.6. Nothing big, just a little small earthquake activity. Far as the rest of the state goes, not really seeing anything of abnormal activity. The 2.5 map and above shows there's one earthquake from last night down there south of Tijuana. Looks like one earthquake up here in the Round Valley area that's south of the Long Valley supervolcano, 2.6. That earthquake coming in yesterday. So it doesn't look like we've seen anything really new today kicking off in terms of 2.5 and above. Just a handful of smaller microquakes. Oil fields out here in Texas getting hit. One earthquake out close to the New Madrid seismic zone, a 2.1 out in the Alton, Missouri area, about 11 kilometers deep or so. Getting a little activity out here in South Carolina once again, 2.2. I think it was earlier this year or earlier last year. I remember that pretty good earthquake swarm that kicked off down here. We had a few hundred earthquakes. Nothing ever became of it, but it kind of startled some nerves there a little bit, and scientists were looking into it, trying to figure out what was going on. This area does sit, though, in a major seismically hazardous zone. You wouldn't think it, right? South Carolina, North Carolina, this area? No way. Oh, yes. This is a major zone. We definitely see some large earthquakes out here. It's been a little while since we've seen any major earthquakes. I've covered that a time or two in past updates. But we'll move on from that. Still seeing some activity here in Puerto Rico. Look at that. 4.1 in the last 15, 20 minutes or so. So things are still active down here. Keep an eye on this. It's been, a little while since we've seen any large-scale movement out here. I think we may be coming up to it, though, soon, looking at that activity. All right, let's go ahead and check out the rest of the globe. Looks pretty quiet everywhere else. All right, let's check out space weather, see if we got anything stirring up out there, any major flares going on. It doesn't look like it. Things look like they're in the C flare category for right now over the last 24 hours. Take a look at the magnetogram image showing the complexity of these sunspot cores, and they continue to separate and separate and separate. Look at that. These guys are just pulling apart. They don't want anything to do with each other in terms of the complexity of the magnetic fields. That does not mean, that means that, well, it means that we're not going to see any solar flare activity from these sunspot regions. And in fact, it looks like it has just completely squashed since last night. Really not seeing any promising development, at least looking at these sunspot cores for now. If anything, it would be C flare activity, but maybe this little region right here, a little bit of close proximity with these colors, but that's about it. There's really, to me, it doesn't look promising at all for anything. C flare activity, but that's about it. 99% chance for C flares. M flare at 40, X flare is around 5%, according to the solarham.net site. Really not expecting any major auroras in the forecast. Things look green across the board. That means no greenery in the sky. Severe weather potential out here. Right now, mainly some wind and hail threats down in southern Arizona. Really not anything for tornado threats. And that is due to a low pressure system spinning off the southern California coast, bringing in some significant rainfall and that chance for some wind and hail damage out there into the southern portions of Arizona. Not really expecting anything major. That low pressure system is going to scoot off into the center portion of the country, bring with it some warmer air from the Gulf, bringing up some rain and whatnot to the east coast once again. It looks like our next storm here on the west coast is going to be around the 27th or the 28th of this month. Another low pressure system coming in off the Pacific for California. And this is looking a little bit more promising than what it did last night. Last night it showed all of these backing off. So it kind of just goes to show you how quick these models can change. We'll hope that it stays this way, though. The total accumulated precipitation out here looks pretty decent out here across the west coast once again as we head into the new year, 2024. Pacific Northwest getting some more moisture, but it looks like this is aiming into Northern California as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Southern California kind of skipping out on this one, but again, this is way out in the future. These guys might need a little break, right? They're getting some decent rainfall down there right now, and they have been receiving some decent rain, so they probably want a little break. Weather radar. This is current radar down there. Looks like some thunderstorms out there in Southern Cal right now, kicking up into Baja, heading to the southern Arizona area. So just a heads up for some wind and some hail potential out there today. Aside from that, you know, it is what it is. We'll continue to watch things right now. Keep an eye, Puerto Rico area, New Zealand showing that deeper movement down here into the, that would kind of be the southern end here of the Hikurangi subduction zone. You can see it on the, on this oceanic map here. Subduction zone right there. And that deeper activity, of course, is going to occur further on this map on the left side of this plate boundary, because that's where the subduction zone is at, down below here. Starts right here, Pacific plate going underneath this region. Keep an eye on this area. That's some decent movement way down below. We will catch you guys back here later tonight, Friday. I am not going to barbecue because I still have some leftover brisket. I don't even know if it's still good, but I am barbecued out for a little while. So I don't know, maybe might take Missy Mimi's to dinner. We'll see. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys back here later tonight. Enjoy your Friday.